Peace and welcome to The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for joining us and being a part of the conversation. Folks, we got a lot to get to. It is Thursday, so we're going to be checking in with Hassan, Mr. Politics Giordano, to give us some of the latest information and updates about what's going on with the Supreme Court of the United States. Now, we know earlier this week they started a new session with new Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, and they have already started to jump right into the mix, especially Justice Jackson. She jumped right into the mix, talking about a major case that has wide-ranging implications. We'll talk a little bit about that. Also, can we at least talk about what's going on with Brittney Griner, as her wife has reported that she is at her weakest moment right now. I want to get your thoughts about that. And then later, let's talk a little bit about rebranding your life and your career. We'll be checking in with brand strategist Carlos Williams of DBC to give us some insights on how we can take advantage of opportunities even in the midst of uncertainty. So stay with us. All of that is happening and a whole lot more on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. All right, folks, welcome to The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in this afternoon and being a part of the conversation. So much we got to talk about. Make sure y'all show y'all support before we jump into the conversation. Make sure y'all show y'all support for us for what we do here at the Black Star Network. If this is your first time or if this is your 1000th time, we welcome you to the show and welcome you to the platform. This is a Black-owned media institution. This is a platform where we have our conversations. And of course, this is a platform that's for the people, by the people. So your support is absolutely necessary. Check us out at blackstarnetwork.com. All right, folks, let's get right into it. It is Thursday. We check in with Hassan, Mr. Politics Giordano, who serves as the owner of DMV Daily Media Group, to give us some of the latest updates and his analysis about some of the big political stories. So let's welcome him now into the conversation. My brother Hassan. Brother Hassan, peace, bro. How are you this afternoon?
What's happening, Captain? I'm just right. I'm still getting over the Baltimore Ravens giving up a big one this past Sunday, but it's all good in the hood.
I'm not even going to discuss this with you right now, brother. Oh man, not going to discuss it. If y'all don't know, Hassan a huge Ravens fan. So am I, though.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, we got a lot to talk about, folks. When we have these conversations, no conversation is complete without you. So make sure y'all get ready to post your discussion points in our chat on YouTube and on Facebook, and we'll make sure we'll get as many of your voices in as possible. But Hassan, let's talk a little bit about what's going on with the Supreme Court. Of course, this past Monday of this week, the new session of the Supreme Court started. There's a lot of expectations, a lot of fanfare, especially with new Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson coming onto the bench. And she jumped right in a very, very big way. First and foremost, let's talk about some of the big cases that this session is going to be posing for the Supreme Court. Might be, and I'm not trying to use this term loosely, but this might be one of the most historic sessions for a lot of different reasons, Hassan, because not just because of Justice Jackson being added to the bench, but also because of some of these big cases, these big decisions around voting rights, voting rights, you're talking about same-sex marriages, interracial marriages. A lot of big fundamental issues are on the agenda. But I wanted to start off talking about this first one, about what the Guardian has described as being one of the most terrifying cases of all is about to be heard by the United States Supreme Court. Take a look at this here, folks. Look at that. Boom. This is from the Guardian. And they're talking about this case related to a rule, and I want to throw this up there, Keenan, if we can. Let's talk about how this case of Moore v. Harper which could lock in right-wing control of the United States for generations. Here's what they said. The leading example of this disturbing shift is a little-known case called Moore v. Harper, which could lock in right-wing control of the United States for generations. The heart of the Moore case is a formerly fringe legal notion called the Independent State Legislature theory. This theory posits that an obscure provision in the United States Constitution allowing state legislators to set time, place, and manner rules for federal elections should not be subject to judicial oversight. In other words, state legislatures should have the absolute power to determine how federal elections are run without court interference. Ooh.
Yeah, huge.
So first, so I'm assuming, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, bro. You study political science. You know this much more than I do in some cases, right? Is this one of those cases where we didn't think that that would be a major game-changing case because we've been kind of operating on automatic pilot when it comes to federal elections for so long, but then Trump happened, January 6th happened, and now this might be a game-changing case. Is that what we're looking at with this?
It was going to be game-changing regardless. I think more people will probably pay attention because of what happened with Trump. But what we have is an evolving court, and it's a difference of opinion in regards to how the court should operate and more so how the justices should interpret the cases that are coming before him. Now, if we go back in history, and I've talked about this before when we talk about Supreme Court issues, the Federalist Society, known at many of them as originalists, were these conservatives, and still are, these conservatives such as former judge. He tried to get on the Supreme Court from Ronald Reagan, and the Senate would not confirm him, but he was former U.S. Solicitor General Robert Bork. They believed in this jurisprudence of original intention, Farajii, and meaning the words of the Constitution were to be interpreted exactly how the framers of the Constitution meant it. So it can't evolve. It was supposed to stay static, but those words were never to be, evolve over time. And while those on the left and their greatest adversary, Justice William Brenner, believed that the genius of the Constitution rests not in its static interpretation or meaning based off those that are dead and gone, but that it evolves in its adaptability over time is what made the Constitution so great. And so you're starting to see these arguments play out. That is really what Roe v. Wade came about. Back in the 80s, when Ronald Reagan was in, you had Bork and these other former Justice Scalia. He was an attorney back then. They were interpreting, okay, we know we don't want Roe v. Wade. So how do we attack Roe v. Wade? In one argument to overturn it or several arguments? And they were trying to figure out how we go about overturning precedents such as Roe v. Wade. And so you see people like former Chief Justice Harry Blackmun, who admitted, even during Roe v. Wade, that the words of the Constitution did not compel him and those voting in favor of Roe v. Wade to afford such protections to women. Because in the Constitution, it never mentions the right to privacy. But rather, the court had said that over time, they began to recognize the privacies that are being afforded to U.S. citizens, and they afforded the decision of a woman's reproductive right as one of those privacies, right? So it was never a constitutional matter. So originalists are saying, if it's not written, it ain't so. If it ain't in the Constitution, I ain't going with it. And so what they realized is it's not the arguments they were making, it's the justices. So they started saying, well, we need better justices, more ultra-conservative justices like we have today. We have a 6-3 majority of ultra-conservative justices. The only one that might be fluttering is Chief Justice John Roberts, who at times may go with the liberals, but that's still a 5-4 decision, not in favor of what many of us would deem precedent in many cases. We saw it in Roe v. Wade. And so you said in the beginning of the show, this session is going to be ultra important because, cases like Moore v. Harper is something that goes under the radar. Everybody's paying attention to the Alabama case that we'll talk about a little bit later in regards to the gerrymandering and what that means for minorities. Everybody's talking about the affirmative action that's going to be taken up later on in this session. They're talking about the more high profile, but Moore v. Harper is just as important, if not more important, than some of these other cases that are before the courts, is because it speaks to how our society moves forward. Are we going to be a democratic society, or are we going to be authoritarian? Are we going to allow these courts and these legislatures across the country to begin to move in such a way that the citizens really don't have any real win, because you can't bring it before the courts? And part of Moore v. Harper, the basis of it, the heart of it is, as they're talking about, is that the legislatures will have absolute power. You cannot then challenge this in the courts. And the problem with that is the majority of the legislatures across this country are Republican-leaning legislatures who have a certain way of operating, a certain way of looking at things. And that means if you can't no longer challenge it, not only can they begin to do things electorally across the country, but as we've seen in the Trump case, when he tried to, many people don't understand the electoral process. Well, when a state such as Maryland says 10 electoral votes, right? So the popular vote, they vote, and whoever wins that popular vote, the electoral count, the 10 electoral votes will then go to whoever won the popular vote. But if this passes, what'll happen is you'll start to see states like Maryland, who may have voted popularly for the Democrat, then they'll say, no, we're just going to give 8 or out of all 10 to the Republican nominee. And there's no way to challenge that in the court system. And so what this is a further erosion of the Voting Rights Act. And that's part of the argument that's being made on the North Carolina law that we're going to talk about that's before the courts, that was argued just on Tuesday. But this one is one that I think, Farajii, we're going to see a majority pass this. And the reason why I say that is people don't realize that about 70 cases a year are heard by the Supreme Court. It's what we call a very lazy court, because out of 7,000 petitions, only about 70 of them get heard a year. Now compare that to Brazil, who hears about 100,000 cases a year.
What?
Think about 100,000 from Brazil, and we're talking about 70 cases in America.
Wait a minute, hold on, bro. Very quickly, why is that? Is that because of the cycle, like how long the session actually lasts? Is not like a quote unquote year-round session. Why is that?
No, part of it, and part of it is, our justices have felt like we only cherry pick the cases that we want to hear, whereas though Brazil's legal system is a little different. Once you appeal the way we appeal, you go to the lower courts. When it goes to their Supreme Court, they typically hear almost every case that comes before them. Whereas though our Supreme Court, if they did that, they would be doing about 7,000 petitions or 7,000 cases a year. But instead, they decide through a majority vote that we never hear and never see, but the justices decide on which cases that they want to take up. And the issue with that is many times, especially with these conservative majorities, the cases they decide to take up are usually cases that they want to get passed, that they realize either they want and they know that they'll get passed, or two, that they feel needs a higher court's approval, right? And so in cases like Moore, you're going to have a legal theory that's being argued, but you'll have justices who are letting their ultra-conservative biases weigh in on how they decide and how they vote in these cases. And recent history has shown us spectacularly that right-wing think tanks and their funders have found this out. Since the 80s, they have meticulously tried cases in a lower court knowing that they were either going to win, or if they didn't, that they were going to appeal it to a higher court and eventually get it to where they want it in the U.S. Supreme Court. Because once you have control of the Supreme Court, there is no other remedy beyond that. And if they feel like if we can get it through the lower courts and get it there, that we can find judges. It's basically like you're shopping judges, right? But in this case, they're shopping courts. They know if we can get it and we appeal it to the lower courts, to the higher court, we're going to get a favorable decision in many cases. And that's what they've been doing on many of these right-wing cases that, even as Roe v. Wade has been precedent, they knew that, okay, we'll take cases that strip away at Roe v. Wade. And at some point, we're going to get a court that's going to be in our favor, that's going to overturn Roe v. Wade. They've been attacking Roe v. Wade since the 80s, since Ronald Reagan has been president. And they've been chipping away at it. And they finally got the court that they needed to overturn what many thought would have been precedent for our lifetime and even beyond that.
Wow. Let me take some comments very quickly before we take our first pause today. Taylor, you checked in as we've been talking to Mr. Politics Hassan Giordano about this Moore v. Harper case, which can be a game changer on how states look at federal election. Take a look, Taylor. You said it needs to be amended. Real Brooklyn, you checked in, my guy. You said, what's the difference between this and the poll tax era and the system of the racist origins of the Electoral College, which still empowers white Southern mentality till this very day? And then Taylor, you came back and said, interpretation of the law will be problematic from now on. It's a form of manipulation. Wow. All right, so let's kind of break this down, Hassan. First and foremost, where should we stand on this? Where should states stand on this? Where should Black folks and citizens stand on this? Do we need to really? Does this legislative state theory? Does this really need to be amended or changed in any way?
Well, the problem is we can stand any which way we want to, but it's not going to mean anything before the justices, right? Because they supposedly can't be swayed politically by any types of rallies and things of that sort. Congressionally, we can try to, possibly do something. But I don't even think congressionally, legislative wise, because these are theories that are being argued. The Independent State Legislative, the ISL, that's a theory that they've been put in place. And it's a theory that really goes to the fabric of state legislatures. So the best way that we can kind of fight back against the ISL theory is to be able to retake control of the legislative chambers across the country. Because again, many a times we look at the congressional and the national elections, but it's the state that we always, they said a long time ago, all politics are local. And so you got to look at the state legislatures. Many of them, again, are Republican controlled and Republican leaning. So in this particular instance, you will really have to kind of fight against retaking control of the legislative chambers, especially in the southern part of America.
And what's about this whole poll tax era? When Real Brooklyn checked in about that, what's your take on it?
Honestly, I can't assume what the brother was talking about. Maybe if they can clarify a little bit more. I mean, I'm assuming that they're talking about the poll tax, and we're talking about with the voting, and that's part of what we're going to see on this North Carolina law that's being argued right now. And Justice Jackson made me so proud this week. She showed that her and the first Latina Justice Sotomayor are going to be a great 1-2 punch, because both of them try to get down to the fabric of these issues, right? But they also argue, they're very no nonsense but very respectful jurists, right? But they want to get to the heart of some of these cases and show their colleagues that a lot of the decisions that they're making can affect the daily lives of minorities across this country. And they do it in a smooth way, that it's not in your face. It's not making these white colleagues of theirs, feel, and I'll say white, I mean Clarence Thomas too, doesn't make them feel taken back. Is this angry black woman like it? No, they're they smooth. I mean, if you would have heard Justice Jackson argue this week on the Voting Rights Act about this North Carolina law and how she broke down the 14th Amendment of America's Constitution and what it was meant to be, and how Alabama's Republican Attorney General, who was arguing before them, Steve Marshall, really was not making a logical case when it came to dividing these voters into the districts. They were making a case of, I want to say, I can't think of what he was saying. Man, it was just so smooth. It just made your mouth drop. And
wow.
Like she's just, it shows that she's going to be a force to be reckoned with on these courts.
Absolutely.
Race neutrality. That's what it was. Race neutrality. That's
okay. And I wanted to certainly bring that up. We're going to take a quick pause, but I want to certainly bring that up because, you know, when we're looking at this whole ISL theory, and then when we look at what's already currently happening, for me, it gives states a lot of power. Now, I don't know if folks really understand how much power that states have always had when it comes to issues of, like, you know, federal elections and all of those things. But this is so big to me because, like, back to your point very quickly, you said we got to get more of our people into state legislators. We've always been seeing a couple of things. You know, when you deal with civics and politics, you've always been told to look at the presidency, look at the presidency. And over the past few years, we've now been seeing all politics is local. So it's about local. Now we're starting to see the conversation going and say it's not just local in the city or the county that you're in. It's really the state. It's the state that has the power. It's the state that has the money around policing. It's the state that has the money around education. It's the state that determines how elections are done. And so now we have to kind of expand our understanding of where the power lies in order for us to make the moves that we need to make. And I think that's, you know, given that we're seeing this just weeks before the midterm elections happening in November, you know, it's important that we drive that point home. Like, you know, every organization, whether you're talking about the NAACP, you're talking about the Urban League, you're talking about the CBC, you're talking about, you know, Black Votes Matter, and all of these organizations that are pushing the conversation forward about voting rights and the importance of representation. It's letting people know, hey, the states and the local politics are dictating the agenda. It's the state and local politics. Very quickly, Hassan, what's your take on that, bro?
Well, it's always been to some degree to that point, right? But people need to understand politics. The reason why they say all politics is local, because most of the essential needs that you have on a daily basis, whether it's your local taxes, whether it's your police department, your education, all of that is local, right? That is not more like a federal issue. So a lot of the stuff that you deal with that you need, from the trash collection, that is so. But the problem is many of our constituents and people don't understand the difference between a council person whose job mostly is the kind of nitty gritty, making sure the trash gets picked up, the police, you know, things of that sort. Whereas though the state is it's a legislative body that deals with the educational funding that goes to local jurisdictions. It deals with the state laws and how they're enacted. And the federal government is completely different in how they operate. And so people have to understand the difference. And especially when you're arguing certain points and trying to understand the mechanisms of government and how they're done, you have to understand which one. Otherwise, you're going to be calling your federal elected representative talking about your trash. And they're going to be like, what are you talking about? Why are you calling me? Right. And instead of doing their job and saying, you know what? You're my constituent, so I'm going to make sure you get with the council person that's in your district, because that's their job, that's their responsibility. But I'm going to take it upon myself to connect you with their aide to make sure that gets done. That's the type of elected leadership that we no longer have. It's like, why are you calling me? I ain't got nothing to do with that. Goodbye. You know, and nothing's getting done. And it frustrates the average voter who thinks like, okay, well, they're just telling me to go kick rocks. So why am I even going to turn out the vote when I can't get nothing done?
That's right.
Political end.
That is absolute facts. All right, folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, more conversation with Mr. Politics himself, Hassan Giordano. Let's talk about little bit more about what Justice Jackson is doing and the impact that she's making on the courts. Let's talk about some of the other big decisions that need to be made. And certainly we want to hear from you. So make sure you continue to post your comments in our YouTube and our Facebook chat, and let's continue the conversation on the other side. So stay with us. Stay with us. There's a whole lot coming up in the second 30 of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shootings.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are black beyond measure.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20036-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We've been talking to Hassan, Mr. Politics Giordano, who serves as the owner of DMV Daily Media Group. He's joining us every week on every Thursday to give his analysis about political topics and new developments in that space. And we wanted to have a conversation about the history that is being made this week as Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson has now been officially serving on the court for the past few days. The new term started, the new Supreme Court session started on Monday. And so she's already been making some waves with her thoughts and her interpretation of the law, especially when it comes to something as critical as the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Of course, we know that this has been always, and let's bring Hassan back into the conversation, this has always been a very, very concerning point for Black folks in this country, because we are again, this is our election season, of course, for the midterms. We got a presidential election, but more importantly, looking at how do we protect the rights of Black folks going to the polls, making sure that we have all that we need to do. Hassan, you've been an advocate of this in the city of Baltimore and the state of Maryland, of making sure that folks are able to come out and to vote without any intimidation, without any level of suppression, that they come out to vote. The new Justice Jackson, spoke on this. She spoke on this issue, and I'm going to share with you what NBC's reported on this. Folks, take a look. It said that in her second just her second day on the bench, she spoke about the enactment of the Constitution's 14th Amendment, stressing how its aim was to redress historic harms to Black people in the aftermath of the Civil War and the end of slavery. It was a symbolic moment in a courtroom in which only 3 Black justices have ever sat. Exploring the history that lurks in the background of the dispute over Alabama's congressional district maps, Justice Jackson said that the entire point of the amendment was to secure rights of the freed former slaves. As a result, she wondered, how could the state be barred from considering race when deciding whether more majority Black districts should be drawn? Her intervention in the midst of an oral argument on Alabama's defense of its map that a lower court said discriminated against Black voters was just one example of her active role in her early days on the high court. I'm happy that she's making waves on this, but it's still very unfortunate and sad that in 2022, Hassan, we have to have an advocate to talk about the value, the importance, and of Black folks being able to vote and not being neglected because of some redrawn maps. Talk to us about what you're seeing.
Well, the problem is they understand, the racial implications of the redrawn map. They just don't care. And that's the problem. And, part of the argument that will be made even on gerrymandering is, first of all, don't get it twisted. Gerrymandering is done from both parties, Republican and Democrat alike. Democrats try to gerrymander what's called pack districts. So they want to pack a certain amount of gerrymanders after every 10 years after the census, they redraw the maps. And instead of having common sense and having nonpartisan commissions draw the maps based off of fairness, based off of geography and things of that sort, you have these political operatives, most of them elected themselves, who are drawing the maps based off of packing certain parties into a certain district to make sure that they win that district, right? It's done across the country. It's been done by both parties. But in the Democratic side, most of them pack districts because they want to win, right? And it's not based off more race. It's more based off of party. Republicans, on the other hand, like to pack it based off of minorities as opposed to keeping the minorities suppressed in one particular place and not do it. And that's part of the argument that's being made in this Alabama case that's being heard this week, which Justice Jackson was making that point to, is because Alabama's Republican Attorney General Steve Marshall is basically trying to unravel decades of precedent, right? Their concern is about how they can dilute Black voters and how dividing voters up into these districts is a race-neutral approach. And the Justice Jackson's arguing like, there's nothing race-neutral about this at all, what you're doing. And she's trying to give a history lesson. But if people have to understand, the reason why the Voting Rights Act was passed in the first place was to ensure that states weren't doing what they're doing now and starting to not only just gerrymander, but pass laws that go at the very heart of fairness in elections and allowing these states to pass laws like Florida and Texas out that start to suppress the vote, especially the minority vote in many of these states. If you remember, back in 2013, they started attacking it on the courts. They stripped and really gutted the Voting Rights Act when the key provision of the Voting Rights Act was taken out altogether, which is the federal oversight, that no state would be allowed to pass laws that the federal government and the DOJ deemed that was not beneficial to a group of voters. They gutted that in 2013. Just last year, the Arizona case that they passed made it more difficult to bring cases to the court under Section 2 of this Voting Rights Act. And so this particular case, Farajii, this map really violated what the NAACP from North Carolina has argued, that it violated the Section 2 of the 1965 Voting Rights Act by discriminating against Black voters. They're saying that African-American voters make up about 25% of North Carolina's electorate, that they should have, of the districts drawn, they should have been drawn to be able to have 2 districts with African-American or what they call minority-majority districts, as opposed to just 1. Now think about it. You're arguing for one more district out of just one, right? They have 13 congressional districts. And here's the interesting part. Out of 13 congressional districts, this is a state that's went Democratic over 50% in the last several elections. And yet the Republicans control 8 out of the 13 congressional district seats there in North Carolina. So it shows that it's not working fairly. It's working for a particular party, but it's not working fairly on behalf of the people. But the sad part is the justices aren't going to look at it like that. They're going to, quote unquote, look at it from a legal aspect. But let's be honest, after they've all but stripped away entirely the Voting Rights Act, we're to a point now that states are being given the rights to not only gerrymander states across this country without recourse, but also to pass laws that effectively strip away the voting rights, as your viewer was saying earlier, which I think he was talking about when we're talking about the poll taxes. Nothing has changed. They just use a different terminology now. It's not called poll tax, but it's basically exactly what it is, just a different terminology. And it's sad, but at the end of the day, it is what it is.
Hassan, what are you and other politicals concerned that this redistricting that we see happening in Alabama is going to affect? It may spread into other states, because I also read that in state legislatures, Republicans control 30 out of the 50 state legislators in the country. So is there some real concern that if the Supreme Court sides with Alabama on this, and they're saying that because of this conservative majority, most likely they're going to make a decision in favor of Alabama, that this could spread into other states? Is that a big concern for you and others?
Oh, absolutely, because it's going to set a precedent that I guarantee they're not going to try to overturn that type of precedent. But here's another thing. See, the lower courts have agreed with the NAACP and the voters of North Carolina. The lower court said that the Supreme Court precedent that the plaintiffs have shown that they need a second majority-minority district. But the Supreme Court, remember back in February, they weighed in on this case by allowing the state to move forward with the drawn map, even while they're waiting to hear. And they ruled on that 5-4. Chief Justice John Roberts sided with the liberals of the court, but it still passed 5-4 to allow North Carolina to move forward during this election under the redrawn map that we're arguing right now. So if the justices back in February allowed the state to move forward with that map, I'm almost certain that most individuals who pay attention and watch the courts pretty much have said that this court is probably going to go right back along with at least the 5-4, if not a 6-3 decision on behalf of the Alabama Republican Attorney General, Steve Marshall, allowing for this to take place and move forward. And yeah, Farajii, you're going to see this, if you haven't already, we've seen it really happening across the country, but it's going to get worse. Because as you continuously erode the Voting Rights Act and start to allow these conservative states to do what they want, when they want it, in terms of not only just, packing districts, but also, taking away voting rights and certain rights as it relates to voting for minorities, it's just going to become a trend. It's going to become precedent. And it's going to be harder and harder for us to challenge it, because they keep taking away, eroding at the voting rights in Section 2 of the voting right. So you're not going to have any legal recourse. So the only recourse you're going to have is political, and it's going to be hard to do that in these conservative states who continuously put in these redneck Republicans who continue to pass laws like we've seen in Florida and Texas, North Carolina, and others.
Absolutely. Let's go to get a couple of comments from our online culture crew. McCole, you checked in and said Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson did not come to play. She is on the SCOTUS to make an impact in this nation. And we talked about this earlier this week, folks, when we mentioned that, on Monday, that the big impact that she's going to be making will be her dissent, her opinionate, her dissenting opinion. which Mayor Kirk Schmoke, former mayor of Baltimore City, said, which will shape law and policy down the road. So, I think that's going to be, that's going to be the role that she plays, that she's going to bring up questions, bring history to the conversation that will make some people think, especially those of us who now are interested in seeing and looking at some of these decisions from the Supreme Court a little bit more closely. So I agree with you there, McCall. Thank you for checking in. Turner family, you said, LOL, they are making it too complicated. It's simple. They will always move the goalposts if the policy will help balance out power for Black folks. Simple. Think about it. It sounds like that seems to be the case again here right now, Hassan. That is always some change up. There's always some goalpost moving. Right when we're at a certain point. And so my hope is that the people of Alabama, Black folks and white folks down in Alabama, will say, you know what, this is not fair. This is not good for, quote unquote, not good for democracy. So we need to get involved. I mean, for cases like this, we know what Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Jackson is doing, but what can the people do? What's one of the I guess one of the strategies that the people can employ on a subject, on an issue like this?
Unfortunately, not. The reason is, so even the people are almost in the same trick bag as Justice Ketanji Jackson, right? Because while she's going to, and I agree with Mayor Schmoke, he's a learned jurist. He understands this. What many people don't get is she's not going to make a big impact right now because she's one of 3 liberal justices, so out of 9. So she's never going to be probably in a position, at least in the next 10 to 20 years, to have a deciding vote to make a 5-4 decision, right, in her favor. So her dissenting opinion will mean a lot, because it might not mean a lot on the case before them, but it's going to mean a lot because dissenting opinion goes to legal scholars. It goes to making better policy in the future. So it helps from that level, but she's not going to make any impact on the court itself. That's why, they sat back and the white justices, you can have your Black justice all you want. Guess what? We still run this court. And that's what they're looking at in these legislators and these congressional makeups of Alabama and North Carolina and Florida and Texas. You can talk all that what you want, but unfortunately, you ain't got the votes to override us. You don't have the votes to get us out of office, and not enough white people are going to side with us to make them, do right, because they don't care. It doesn't affect them. So until it impacts them personally, like abortion. Abortion didn't impact Republicans, but it impacts Republican women. So you're going to start to see them come out in droves now in November. Yeah. So until a policy like that begins to impact you directly, you feel like, well, it doesn't bother me, so why would I get involved? And so once it starts to impact people of all colors, of all makeup, of all political affiliations, that then and only then will we see an uprise and a change. But it doesn't look like that's coming anytime soon.
No, not at all. Tiana, you checked in, and I think, Hassan, this is a great way as we end this end your report today. Tiana said the Supreme Court can't be trusted, especially since they have unqualified individuals posing as judges. But I want to take it in this space, Hassan. The Supreme Court is supposed to be unbiased, excuse me. The Supreme Court is supposed to look at things through the lens of the Constitution and interpret it that's in the best interest of the people. Because the Supreme Court is so conservative and so political, you still got Clarence Thomas up there. Roland put out this tweet and had a picture of Clarence Thomas, had a picture of Kanye, Candace Owens, and some other folks, and said, which one of them got to go? Right? And
all of them.
And then Roland was like, damn. And I said Clarence Thomas, because he's the quiet assassin. All of them other people, yeah, they talking heads, but nobody is in the seat of power to influence policy, to interpret the law. He got to go. So when you got a Supreme Court that is just as divisive as the former president and Trump, how can people really, respect the decisions? How can the American people really, have faith that this court is going to do something in the best interest of the American people? How's that going to happen?
Well, I can tell you that, look, it's not going to make you have faith all of a sudden. I mean, most people who are pessimistic about politics and government are that way for a reason. And nothing that's going to be said or done on this program or in government or in these courts is going to change that overnight, right? But what I will say is an effective way that I think Democrats have lost their way, but the Republicans stay on point with, is understanding the power of the legal system. There's a reason why Donald Trump got in office, and his main focus was appointing judges across the board. Ronald Reagan was the same way. The Democrats don't really do that. And what happens with that, though, is if you begin to shape the courts, like when you shape the legislative bodies, right? Then you begin to control the dialogue and how. So when these cases come before these courts, when you have more liberal-leaning judges or justices on these lower courts, then you'll start to see, as we saw, what I said earlier, only 7,000 of the petitions only 70 of them go before the Supreme Court. So that means the other 6,900 or however many is left go back down to the lower courts. This is a way for us to begin to shape policy, because those cases that they don't take don't just go away. They just are being by the decisions on the lower courts. They're not being accepted by the higher court. So if the lower courts, you have control and you have judges who are more like-minded of individuals like you and I, if you control those courts, then the greater majority of the cases don't even make it before the Supreme Court. So those cases will be decided by those. But the problem is a lot of the lower courts are now being controlled by the conservative judges that were appointed by people like Donald Trump and George W. Bush. Because Democrats get in office and look at Joe Biden. Look at the number of judges Joe Biden has appointed thus far. Compare that to the first 2 years of Donald Trump. Just go look it up on Google. It'll show you. And I mean, the difference is stark. You'll be like, what? Because they don't look at it the same. They understand how to play the game of politics, meaning the Republican Party. It's like the Democrats are in la-la land somewhere. They still in elementary school. And they got to come up with the times. Otherwise, we're going to continue to see things like this happen over and over and over, especially as it relates to things that directly relate to African-American minorities.
Absolutely. All right, here's something else very quickly that came across the wire, and I don't know if you saw this or not, but it was just announced a little bit ago, just like a few minutes ago. President Biden, and I know this is the loop. We didn't discuss that we were going to talk about this, but I know you can speak on this, Hassan. You're the guy for it. President Biden has announced that he is pardoning thousands of Americans convicted of what he calls simple possession of marijuana under federal law, as his administration has taken a dramatic step towards decriminalizing the cannabis and addressing charging practices that disproportionately impact people of color. This just came out, folks. Hassan.
Mm-hmm. They're pulling out all the stops with this feel-good, do-nothing policies from this administration.
Wow. This sounds big. Now, look. Part of me, and I know, Brother Roland going to talk about this. We're going to come back and talk about it tomorrow. But on first look, first take, on this, as this just came out across the wire. What's your take on this, bro? Like, is this like you call it feel-good politics? Is this feel-good politics, or is this going to be something of substance that's going to change the game, especially for black men and boys?
No, not really. It's political theater. Here's the thing. If I would have more respect for the administration if they said, and not only are we going to reverse those decisions and get that off your record, but we're going to give you financial relief for those who lost their jobs because of these bullshit charges, for those who lost their housing and could not get housing and all that, for the convictions. Because you got to understand, in certain cases, in certain states, possession of marijuana, and depending on how it's charged, possession with intent, even though it could have been for personal use, these are charges that could possibly make it a felony in certain states, which then prohibits you from voting, prohibits you from getting Section 8 housing, prohibits you from getting certain jobs. So if you can then follow that up with the financial impact that it had on Black and brown men and women in this, then I'd be impressed. But this is nothing but political theater ahead of November 8th to act like we're showing that we're trying to do something for you, to hope that these individuals who normally may not have came out to vote, especially might not have voted for Democrats, are going to now somehow turn out the vote because you did this. And unfortunately, it's not. We need to have a comprehensive, because this is nothing but executive authority. I want comprehensive legislation passed by Congress that makes marijuana legal in this country, that takes away the past criminal convictions. I don't care what you look like, but we also know that the majority of that look like you and I, and then gives financial relief to those who are impacted by that. Otherwise, what's it going to do? Nothing.
Yeah, the president said in a statement today that no one should be in jail just for using or possessing marijuana. Too many lives have been upended because of our failed approach to marijuana. It's time that we right these wrongs. And also, according to the White House, no one is currently in federal prison solely for simple possession of the drug, but the pardon could help thousands overcome obstacles to renting a home or finding a job. And I'm thinking that this might add some momentum to states attorneys that those progressive states attorneys that have spoken out and saying that they're not going to charge local citizens with possession of marijuana. So I'm with you. I want to see some concrete, things put in place. And again, this just came out, so they may roll out a number of programs or a number of things. But to have the president put this out there, and again, you got to always, because this is politics, this is how it goes. The timing of this, weeks before the national midterm elections, again, this is going to be put out there. I want to make sure, though, if this is really what we're trying to do, like those suggestions that you made, then we got to put some more fire to the feet of the president and the vice president and to Congress on this situation.
Absolutely, because Congress is the one who can make marijuana legal. The problem we have is we have a national society, right, and a federal law that still makes marijuana illegal. But then you have states like California and others who allow marijuana is legalized. But the problem is you cross from California into Nevada, not thinking, smoking because it's legal where I'm coming from. And now you get arrested because federal law, you just basically transported an illegal substance. So make it legal across the board so people ain't got to decide, do I got to go to this state? Do I got to do, you know what I mean? Like, that's a huge, look, Brittney Griner's in jail just because of it. I mean, obviously Russia's a different story and what happened, but people have to understand that she would have never had that in her bag had it not been legal where she came from.
There it is. That's a great point.
So,
great point.
From a local perspective, I ain't talking about Russia right now, but from a local perspective, we can't be determining from state to state depending on that. So it needs to be a national thing. That's something that the president can't do on his own. Congress needs to act, and they need to act now.
Absolutely. My guy, Hassan, Mr. Politics, G. O'Donnell, always a pleasure to have you check in on Thursdays, give us your analysis or insight on these things. We got to have you back, bro, but we'll keep our eyes on what the president's trying to do and the simple possession of marijuana, the whole situation. But thank you, big bro. We truly appreciate you. Thank you.
Always a pleasure, bro. Go Ravens!
Go Ravens! All right, folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, look, let's have a conversation about branding, how you can take you can take your business to the next level. We check in with Carlos Williams to give us some insight. He's a brand strategist. He's an expert in making you look better, and that way you can feel better, and that way you can produce better. You know what I'm saying? So we'll have that conversation. Stay with us. That discussion is up next here on The Culture, here on the Black Star Network. Don't go anywhere.
When we invest in ourselves, our glow, our vision, our vibe, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
All right, folks, welcome to the second hour of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in. Big shout out to all of our new viewers. Thank you so much. And, of course, a big shout out to my online culture crew that's always holding it down, always keeping the conversation interesting, and always making sure they're doing it for the culture. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, folks, we're going to be starting having another discussion in a moment, but just want to let you know, again, we need your support. Continue to support us here at Black Star Network as we do the great work of having these conversations and doing the great work of telling our story, pleading our case, and everything is important for us right now as we go into a period of taking Black Star Network to the next level. So you can join us in this movement, and you could be a part of the momentum here at Black Star Network. Go to our website at blackstarnetwork.com. Also, follow me on all of my pages. I'm on Twitter at Farajii. I got a little situation going on Twitter right now. You boy, when you talk about cultural stuff, Black folks get in there. Dang, I'm telling you. Man, the conversation has been wild, absolutely wild. But y'all can check it out on my Twitter page right now. Also, you can hit me up on my Instagram at The Real Farajii. Would love to connect with y'all. And on Facebook, I'm at Farajii Muhammad. But yo, check out the Twitter joint because the conversation, all I said was put out something about the N-word and woo. That's all I can say. Check it out. All right. Let's shift gears. Let's have a conversation about how you can take your life, how you can take your career to the next level with a simple stroke of a pen. It might be a click of a button, or the purpose is to rebrand yourself as being one who can do it all, who can multitask, rebrand yourself as one who can make a splash in any industry that you want to go into, but you want to stand out among this very, very highly competitive market space that we're finding ourselves to be in. So we wanted to bring in an expert to talk to us about what that means, rebranding our lives, rebranding our career in the midst of so much uncertainty. We have with us super branding strategist, Mr. Carlos Williams, who is the founder of DBC, which is a brand strategy agency. This is a company that is a creative branding agency that is headquartered in the heart of New York City. They use storytelling through design to elevate the underdog and raise awareness for their clients on the court and off-court values and distinguish them from their competitors. I love it. Let's welcome now to the culture here on the Black Star Network, Mr. Carlos Williams. Carlos.
Hi
there. Hey, brother. How you feeling, sir?
I'm feeling great. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Not a problem at all. All right, Carlos, talked a little bit about the work you're doing with DBC, but let's have a conversation about this whole idea of branding, Carlos, because we are in a time in our culture where it seems like that is the place, that is the thing to do. is to brand yourself. But here's my pushback on this, and you're a brand strategist, but this is the pushback. How do we have a culture that can support, individuals and their entrepreneurial efforts without us becoming commodities?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say brands are personalities, right? They represent the commodity that you might be selling, but the brands that we build are how we communicate our personalities, our authenticity to everyone else who's in our target audience, right? So I think how you prevent from becoming a commodity is not caring about what people who are not in your target audience think about you, right? If you start caring about what everyone thinks about you, then you have to code switch and change it up and do all these things that we don't want to do and are not our authentic self. So whether you're branding a company or you're branding yourself, you really want to focus on the authenticity of it.
So you talking about, and I love that you're saying that it's a part of our personality. But it seems like, and let me just tell you, I don't know how long you've been on social media, but just for the time I've been on social media, brother, Carlos, it feels like you're walking into a virtual marketplace, right? Like I remember social media. I'm about to show my age. When I was in college, I went to college late. So when I was in college, Carlos, I remember MySpace. It was just about connecting with friends, right? Right. Yeah. I'm really showing my age right now. Then I remember when Facebook first started, and it was just about on its own social stuff.
Yep.
Right. Then it got into this other space of like, all right, let's put some business things out there. Let's talk about, let's talk about the products and services that are offered. Now we got IG, and it feels like IG is just a glossy ass magazine, bro. Like,
well, you said it right? Like we used to communicate. I'm sure when newspapers started, right? They were.
They were just information.
Yeah, right. Like they were just ways to get information out there. And then if you have eyeballs on it and you need to sell a product, put it where the eyeballs are. Right. The reason why it's become such a crazy place, it's a marketplace, is because everyone's eyes are always focused there. Right. And so if we put everyone's eyes there, then someone is going to try to sell something to you there because that's where you are. Like we tell our clients all the time, you shouldn't be asking your customers to come to you. You want to go to where they are. So now that everyone's shifting to TikTok, you're going to start seeing TikTok become more commoditized as well. And then the next thing. And so people are just chasing those eyeballs and chasing the ability to get 15 seconds of your attention. It used to be, can we get 30 seconds of your attention for like a minute of your attention? And now we're really down to that if it doesn't happen in the first few seconds, people are moving on to the next thing. And it's not because attention spans are lowered. It's because people's patience is less. We have no patience for anything. We need the answer now, instant gratification. And if your brand's not able to connect with that person in that short amount of time that you have, you're dead in the water.
Yeah. So that just takes us back to my original question about being a commodity. And you humanized it and said branding is simply your personality, right? But it seems like everybody has the same personality, Carlos.
Well, I think a lot of people on social media are chasing the top personalities, right? If you're looking at the Kardashians or the Jenners and you're saying, hey, these are the people who are the most successful on social, and I want to be successful on social, let me mimic them. But are you actually that way in real life? And how are you different, right? Like differentiation. How are you different than them? What are you bringing to the table? That why people should pay attention to you. And so I think it's actually an excellent opportunity right now for if someone a little bit different and has more value comes along, then they're going to be in the perfect place to be able to capture new audiences. But everyone's a media brand, right? Every company's a media brand, every person's a media brand now. And it's just, are we going to adapt as a society? Are we going to push back on it as a society? I think that's what we have to figure out.
So everybody, and see, here's the thing, like you're doing this work of pretty much helping people to accentuate their personalities, right? Like you're not adding, you're just you're uncovering, you're discovering, right?
Big question is like, tell me how you're different than everyone else, right?
Right.
Like, what do you like as a company or as a person, we work with a life coach. All right. Everyone's a life coach now, right? So what do you bring?
Hey, Carlos. Hey, Carlos.
Everyone.
I didn't know so many people had like life coach experience. Like everybody's a life coach. Here's the top three. Here are the top three industries on social media: life coach, financial coach, and fortune teller about your damn horoscope.
I mean, I think you're forgetting the fitness trainers, right? Like, if you go to the gym, you're automatically a fitness influencer, right? Like, what happened to the days just can we go to the gym, work out, like, and then go home? But no, my side hustle is I'm going to show you how my push-ups are different than everyone else's push-ups, right? Or how I'm doing the same push-ups that this person did last week. I'm taking their video, I'm doing it, but I'm wearing Lululemon, so I'm different that way. And so what we try to like really pull out of people is like, how are you different? Right? Like, are you going to be a leader or are you going to be someone who's a part of the pack? Like, so we want to take the people who are leaders have the money. One, they have the money to pay us. Right. And two, they have the potential to grow. And so it's an interesting time to do branding because everyone's so social media focused. We tend to tell our brands to stay off of Twitter because everyone's a critic there. So like you launch a logo there, everyone's like, well, I could have done that. My 5-year-old could have done. Everyone's is a designer, everyone's a content creator, everyone's got an opinion, and there are certain platforms that let you put that information out there and solicit some feedback, and that's great, but there are other platforms that are just inviting the hatred, and that's what we want to help people avoid.
So when you sit down and you talk to your clients and you said, all right, let me help you with your brand strategy, tell us like some of the things that people need to consider when thinking about how they could put their personality out there, right? And I guess the second part of this is, is the social platforms the best platforms to have to accentuate your products, your services, your personality versus some of the more professional platforms like a LinkedIn, for example, where you can go, you know what I mean? Should you just be like on IGN, LinkedIn with the same content or what? Talk to us about that.
Right. So like we always want to start about visibility. Like how easy is it for your potential customer, your client, your donor, if you're a nonprofit, where are they at? And so how can they find you? So if you're a B2B brand, you can have some cool stuff on Instagram or TikTok, but we tend to tell them use that for recruiting to grow your own organization. But on where your clients are making those buying decisions is LinkedIn, right? And so how can you be a thought leader, right? Like everyone can get on LinkedIn and say, I had a really bad day with this sales thing, or like the same things that we see regurgitated over and over on LinkedIn. You can do that all day, or you can bring something different to the table, right? Like, so can you be visible? Can you be different? Can you be authentic? Can you be transparent, which is how easy is it for people to understand what you do? And then lastly, can you be consistent, right? So if you can cover those 5 things,
say those 5 for me again, Carlos, because I think that's dope.
Right. So visibility, distinctiveness, transparency, authenticity, and consistency. I love consistency, right? Because you don't have to be the best brand at every single way, as long as you're consistent, and right. Like you never want to create that letdown. So you can't have an amazing website, and then when someone actually calls you, you answer the phone and you're not so helpful, right? Like you're not excited, you're not enthusiastic. That's why that authenticity piece. Build a brand for who you're actually going to be. Build it for who your employees are. Build it so that people know what to expect and have that experience going through. Like it's an experience, right? Like you bring them in, you get them the product, and you take care of them to renew that relationship over and over again, right? So that client experience has to be consistent throughout from every single touch point, or people aren't going to like you. They're not going to recommend you, and you're going to have some problems growing your business.
All right, so that's on the business side. So share with us, how does branding fit in our personal lives? Do we even need to worry about branding who we are?
Well, it depends on how many people you want following. Like if you're an introvert and you want to hide from the world, then no, you turn your brand. Well, I mean, you can make your brand about you being introverted, but you can also just turn it off, right? You don't need to be perfect at every single step of the way. And sometimes when you want to be really amazing and out there, you don't need to be perfect at every step of the way. Like, I think you have to figure out like what kind of audience you want to have. Is it an audience of friends and family, or is it an audience of the public square, right? If your Instagram's turned to public, I guess you're leaning towards that way, right? Like, so what kind of content are you gonna put out there? And if it's just you having a fun hair day, or you going on a trip, just be that, right? Like, you don't need to worry about, well, like, how do I look in that picture or that video? Did I say the right thing? But if you're trying to use it to monetize, right? Like, people are, if you want to monetize your personality, because it's the only time in history that we've ever been able to just start, like, I can start tomorrow and say, I want to be a life coach, or I can say I want to be a motivational speaker. I can get on tomorrow and try something, and it may get 10 views, but then the next day I try something else, it gets 100. And then you learn what kind of content that your audience is demanding to see, right? If you don't listen to your audience, right, like, then you're not a brand, right? But if you want to grow, like, let your audience decide what kind of content they want to see, right? Like, let them, if you have 50,000 views on one video and 10 on another, but you're really proud of the one that has 10 views, and you're going to keep pushing, you're going to try to force that down your viewers' throats, it's not going to work. So if they're telling you they want more behind the scenes content, how do you actually put that look together as a makeup artist? Then do more of that, and they'll come and hire you to do their makeup. But like, if you only show finished products and you're not taking them along on the journey, then you have no one paying attention to you.
Yeah, this is very interesting. I personally, and let me tell you something. I'm gonna be transparent and authentic, right? All right. Like, I've always have been hesitant about, even though I've worked in media for many, many years, I've always been hesitant to have, like a FarajiiMuhammad.com, type of situation, right? Even though for years, Carlos, people have been like, Farajii, you need your own website, or Farajii, you need this and you need that, right? And I'm just like, maybe I'm an old school guy, because I was, I kind of came into this work before all of this kind of started. So, people have made the social media thing like a must have for certain individuals, right? I feel like I'm Jay-Z. Like, I'm engaged. Well, he doesn't engage at all, because he doesn't. But I'm going to engage. Right, he doesn't have to. But there's always been this hesitancy of like selling yourself, quote unquote. And so, I've always kind of pushed back on that, because I've been one of those individuals who, like, I'm going to let the content speak for itself. I'm going to let, if you watch my show, you will see what we have to bring to the discussion, what we bring to the conversation, instead of, hey guys, like, you got to do all these tricks, like, hey guys. But I don't know, I'm starting to change, and I have to be honest, I'm changing a little bit in understanding the dynamics of things. But then I keep my eyes on where we are culturally, that, we have been at one point, it was like social media, put yourself out there. But then I'm starting to see that there's a level of resistance from that, because people are quote unquote taking social media breaks. They're taking hiatus. They're not as involved in that space as much as they used to be. So it's like, how do you navigate, given all of those kind of ups and downs and the factors of people's behavior? Because that's essentially what you're trying to tap into. You're trying to tap into people's preferences. You're tapping into people's viewing behavior. So how do you navigate through all of that?
So a lot of good questions in there, but I want to point you to one of my favorite YouTube channels, right? It's called, what is it called? It's a history channel that Oversimplified, where it tells you about like historical events animated. They put out 2 videos a year, right? Not every, like, so many YouTube channels are daily vlogs and everything like that. They put out 2 YouTube videos a year. Their YouTube videos go to #1 on trending when they put it out, and then they go back away, right? As a content creator, if you're an author and you write novels, are you writing a novel every day? Are you writing a novel every week? Like, a columnist can write a column every week. So you choose the cadence at what you want to put your content out there with. But like, a website for you could host all of like the curated content that you're most proud of, right? Like it doesn't have to be a place where people go to make sure that what's the latest take you have. You have a TV show to show your latest take, but take a piece of that and put it online and the things that you're most proud of. And it's a good place for you to go reference in the future when you want to look back at a retrospective of your life, or someone wants to do a story about you. It's a good place to archive it where you control the archive.
No, that's it, and I see that a lot. I see that a lot more. All right, so let's talk a little bit about some of the big things that DBC is working on, because you guys have been working on the squash tournament. Talk to us about that. What is that exactly?
The most excitingly random thing I've ever done. So we for the last 6 years, we've been branding 2 squash tournaments, one in New York, one in San Francisco. And it's a sport I never played, right? It's a sport that typically people like us don't have access to.
Oh, that's squash.
Oh yeah. That's squash.
Okay. I've heard of the game. Okay, yeah. All right. I'm sorry. Go ahead, brother. Yes, sir.
Yeah, right. So we didn't see a lot of people that look like us, but squash is actually one of the fastest growing sports in the inner city, right? It's a very urban sport. And they've taken the initiative to put squash in inner city schools. So you have programs like Squash Drive, City Squash, Squash Busters, all these things that are growing the future generation of kids in American kids in squash, right? Like it's used to be a very American dominated sport. For the past decade or so, the sports best are coming from outside of the US. So we have 2 best in class displays of squash in America. We just wrapped up one in San Francisco this past week. And we had an American star, one on the women's side, and an Egyptian star, one on the men's side. But like, how do we bring these athletes to the forefront and really put them on display? Highlight the sponsors that make the sport happen. It's such an interesting challenge to be able to keep it fresh every single year. And then coming up this January right in Grand Central Terminal, which is hard to believe, the stadium will be built. We'll be there for a week, and it's the 25th anniversary of the JP Morgan Tournament of Champions in Grand Central. So super exciting project to start thinking about. Definitely, you're going to see the next generation of squash players, American squash players, start looking like you and me, which is wild to believe, because I grew up thinking it was a Yale and Harvard and University club kind of sport, and now you're starting to see coming up the ranks some awesome talent.
That's all we need, Carlos. Some black folks busting up into the squash tournament.
Getting scholarships to college, right? Like,
next thing you know, we take that joint to a whole new level.
I think it's going to change the game.
can see black folks. I can see, you can take this idea, just pay me back. We can have like squash athletes and be like squid squash.
You know what? I think the lingo of squash, right? There's a whole lingo needs a refresh, and I think the people that are going to do it are these kids who are already speaking in ways that I'm too old to understand, and they're they're gonna be on that court and arguing with the refs just like everyone else does.
Yo, black squash players, y'all better watch out. Black squash players, I'm telling you, it's coming. All right, let me just get a couple of comments from my online culture crew real quick, Carlos. Awesome. Tiana, you checked in and said, look, I remember all we had was damn phones with call waiting. Now we at this point. Right. Right, Tiana. Exactly. Remember you heard the beep, you had to hit the beat. Yeah. Then you're like, hold on.
Click over. Yeah, click over.
Click over. Yo, I'm going to take you back. Star 69. Y'all remember that? Star 69. Trying to figure out, who missed the call? And you always thought you were smooth. Like, all right, hold on. We missed the call. Bang. Star 69. Yeah, I remember that too. Thank you, Tia, for checking it. Taylor, you said, I think we're experiencing a trend that will last about as long as these folks' attention span. Wait for it.
I think she's right.
You think she's right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, we'll be on to the next thing very quickly. So I think the hopefully the days of being an influencer just to be an influencer are over, right? Like, what value are you bringing to the table? And because they're going to be a certain point where there are going to be so many influencers that you won't be able to look up and understand who's different and who do you want to follow.
Right, exactly. Taylor also said, seems like everybody wants to get rich via a social media, following by talking. So how does a brand strategist like yourself, Carlos, how do you deal with that? Because that seems to be the trend right now, that everybody's looking for a come up through social media. And I'm not talking about just doing like fashion videos or even beauty product videos. And that might be the thing, right? Like, you know, and I always kind of make this joke that sometimes we want to be like walking billboards. Like, yes, I'm trying this new product and I'm dressing with this and I'm going to this place, this site to get my clothes. But it's like there is this trend where we want to kind of monetize our social media experience. But then I think on the other side, the psychological side, when you just mentally are always in quote unquote branding mode, like every single thing. And I'm trying to figure out, like, how do we make sure that people don't go all the way to that one side and then forget about the human side on the other end?
Well, one of my favorite humans is Marshawn Lynch, right? And he says, I'm about that action, boss, right? Like, I want people showing their work in action. But like, I think that's much better on social media. So you can talk a little bit, but then what are you actually out in the world doing? What impact are you making? If you compare that with like, here's my mission, and then here's my output. Here are my failures. Here are my successes. Here are behind the scenes. Here's the work we have to do to put in to grow this into a movement. That I think that's perfectly okay, right? Like if you're only talking, there's so many like good parody videos right now on TikTok floating around of people who are mocking these people who only talk and tell you to quit school and drop out of college, buy your apartment, like they just tell you things that are unrealistic, right? What do you have to do to get there? Like and if you make this sacrifice, like show the other side. Like you sacrificed your weekends to work on your side hustle. You sacrificed time with your family to make sure that they have a future, right? Like don't just show the glamour and the glitz, because then it makes people just think that's all there is. But there's hard work that goes on the other side.
Facts. I really appreciate that from the brand strategist, that you don't highlight the glamour and glitz, that you highlight the ups and the downs. And you know what? It's funny that even though people know that, it's still funny that people still kind of believe that some people's lives are really glitzy and glamorous. And it's like, y'all do know that that's not the way.
It's not, if you weren't born into it, it's not the way, right? Like you're gonna have to hustle.
Right. So, all right, let's talk about the I guess the age of your clients and how we should kind of move forward. Like, what's a good age that we should have that a person should get involved in branding themselves? Are you talking? Because we see babies, of course. We know that babies are out there opening up toys to play with them on camera. So we see that.
Have you seen tuition prices, right? Like, so if parents, this might be the strategy for parents to get their kids to pay for their own tuition by putting them out there and getting them brand partnerships.
Wait, hold on, Carlos.
Yeah, okay.
Hey, Carlos. Hey, Carlos. Carlos, my guy, Carlos, brother. If parents put their children out there on social media platforms, we got a couple of different considerations that we have to make. One is, of course, safety and welfare, like well-being, right? Two is, do you really expose your child to that medium so early, where we have seen that it can become addictive? Like, I don't know about any else's children, but does anybody else's children ask for YouTube? Like, I see a lot of phones in babies' hands in the supermarket. Y'all see, does your child like, hey, they don't even say your name. They just be like, hey, phone, YouTube. I mean, so there's got to be a balance in all of that, right?
Yeah, screen time. Right, you're seeing a lot more devices having that screen time setting where you can control your child's screen time. And I can't tell you how to raise your child, but we've seen child actors have success from our generation, right? Like, and we've seen them have massive failures. And so, are you doing it because the child wants to do it, right? Like there was that YouTube family a couple years ago that was accused of abusing their children by making them do all of these vlogs against their will, right? So are the kids actually in love with performing? Then sure, I think it can be healthy. It can, like, you definitely should monitor them. But like, if you're making your kid do this because you want to be famous, right, or you want to be the stage mom, it's not a good thing. And then I think the more exposure your child gets, the more you're opening up to comments of like, well, do they actually want to do this? And people are but if you're getting like 10 views on every single one of your kids' TikToks, stop, right? Like it's not necessary for you to do.
Right. So there has to be some moment of clarity. There got to be some reality that has to set in at some point that your child may not be the next kid influencer.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, if you think about it, they used to have to go to auditions, and if they failed every audition, then they stopped being a child actor. But now you can just put a phone in their face every single day and then say, we're going to keep pushing on this until someone finally notices. But maybe the audience, again, if the audience is telling you they don't want this content, move on, right? Like if your child is telling you they don't want this.
Move on, sir. What you know, you don't move on. They just don't see talent when they see it. So I'm going to jam it down their throats until they recognize my baby got talent. No, they ain't my baby. They don't have talent. You don't have the talent to see me, Carlos.
That's and everyone has a platform now to be able to yell that, right? Like, you guys are just jealous. You're haters. Like, oh, stop. Like, not everyone is meant to be famous, right? Like,
hey, Carlos, I say it all the time. I wish somebody would be like that, just jump in front of the camera like, y'all ain't liking my babies and stuff. Oh, you haters, huh? You hate children. You must hate children because my baby can sing.
Yeah,
man, it's so many different things that you got to consider, especially when you're talking about branding, using strategy. So many things. All right, Carlos, we appreciate your time. What's the best way that folks can get in touch with you and the work that you're doing, brother?
Our website is studiodbc.com, and we're on Instagram at studiodbc as well. Check it out.
There it is, Carlos.
That's amazing. There's tons of great information. There's a way to get started with us. We hire directly from there as well. If you're creative, plenty of roles that we're going to be popping up over the next few weeks and months and years. But yeah, love for everyone to stay in touch with us. Definitely connect with us on Instagram. We're going to grow TikTok at some point these days, but our focus is really growing with brands of all sizes.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Check it out, folks. And you check out DBC. You can see the website. But especially if you're seriously interested in taking yourself, taking your business to the next level, this is what you need to do. Brand strategy is evolving. That is absolutely correct, folks. And so if you're going to go into and talk to a brand strategist, talk to a Black one. Talk to a Black one that understands, where you come from, understand our culture. Carlos, you have been very insightful, brother. Thank you so much. I'm looking at some of our culture crew comments. Taylor said, you two can be a Honey Boo Boo nowadays version. Man, oh man.
She started it all, didn't she?
Man, let me tell you. I'm telling you. And you know what, you got to, especially if you're bringing your children into these spaces, you really do have to do your homework. You have to talk to people. You have to checking in psychologically with your child to make sure that they don't lose themselves at such a young age. I mean, that still has a lot of work that needs to be done. So, Carlos, I'm glad that you have the mindset to give people the straight, real conversation. Like, look, if we go further along with this with your child, just know that there's, we're going to have to put some parameters in place to make sure your child stays a child during this process.
For real.
Absolutely. Carlos Williams, thank you so much, brother.
Thank you for having me. I'll see you soon.
Absolutely. All right, folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let me share with you latest updates around Brittney Griner, the WNBA star who was in prison in Russia, what her wife had to say in a recent interview. We'll talk about that. And Can I say that I knew this was going to happen? All I'm going to say is one name, y'all. Will Smith. We'll have that conversation. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys. This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
When we invest in ourselves, we're investing in what's next for all of us. Growing, creating, making moves that move us all forward. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
All right, y'all. In the final few minutes, I wanted to bring you up to speed on a couple of things. One is the latest development in the case of our sister Brittney Griner, the WNBA star and two-time Olympic gold medalist, who is imprisoned in Russia. So of course, we know that she is sentenced to 9 years and a few months in Russian prison. Well, according to her wife, Sherelle Griner, she told CBS Mornings, take a look at this, folks, that her wife is afraid of being forgotten by the United States. Woo. According to Sherelle, she says she's very afraid about being left and forgotten in Russia or just completely used to the point of her detriment. Like, y'all don't see the need to get me back home? Am I just nothing? This is Sherelle Griner quoting her wife, Brittney, as saying it wasn't clear when the call took place. Wow, take a look, folks. Damn. Wow. Brittney is reported to be at her weakest moment, according to her wife. And I hope we don't forget her. I hope we don't forget. I don't. And this. I think her case is something that it's like, what do we do? What can we do? Right? Like, and I'm saying us as the community, us as the supporters of Brittney. What do we do? What can we do? And this case, of course, has already gone to the highest levels. It's gone to the president. So I don't know if we can do more outside of putting more, pressure on the Biden-Harris administration. Folks, just chime in very quickly. Post your comments on the YouTube and Facebook pages. What do you think? What more should we do? Are we doing enough to make sure that Brittney Griner is not forgotten? Because I'm not sure what else can be done. Because of the sensitivity of the relationship between the United States and Russia, because this is a case that has already gone to trial in Russia, I feel like it's maybe out of our hands, and I'm speaking of the supporters, right? It's not out of the hands of the American government. But every time Black leadership, and as far as I know, every time Black leadership stands before people who have the power and the ability to bring Brittney home, and I'm recalling that last meeting that the civil rights leaders, when they met with President Biden, they put that back out there. They did say, hey, we can't forget about Brittney. I think it was Reverend Al Sharpton. They put that back out there and said, look, we can't forget about Brittney. Of course, President Biden met with Brittney's wife and the family of Brittney. We didn't forget about you. I don't know what else can be done, though. I don't want our sister to just feel like she's just languishing in prison, like she is forgotten. So maybe there needs to be some sort of campaign where we're sending her cards. I don't know if she can accept cards or anything. I would love to hear what y'all have to say on this. Janae, you checked in on this. You said, can we be honest? Janae, you said this. Can we be honest? Prisoners don't come home quickly, ever. Not within the first 6 months. That's a hard pill. That's a hard pill, Janae. Very, very hard pill. I appreciate you posting that. Thank you. Shalinda, you checked in. You said we can march, we can protest, light candles, and ain't nothing different will happen. Wow. And I don't know if we need to exert our energy in that way. I don't know. I don't know if that would be beneficial for us. Zoe, you checked in. Thank you so much, Shalinda and Janae. Zoe, you checked in. You said, where's the public outrage from the LGBTQ plus community? You know what? Let me take a look. I thought they did say something, if I'm not mistaken, Zoe. I thought they definitely said something, but I could be wrong. Maybe I'm thinking that they did say something, but I know there have been a lot, like the WNBA has certainly been at the forefront of trying to get some stuff done. I don't know. Players, all the players in the league of WNBA, hell, even the NBA has been, kind of petitioning. I don't know. I really don't know what we would do in a situation like this. Shalinda, you back then, you said we can talk about her every day until we are blue in the face and nothing will help get her out from Putin. I mean, y'all see how we roll on this show. You know what I'm saying? Just bringing you updates. If I think there's a significant update, there's any type of update, we're going to bring it to you. That way y'all can stay, at least on this platform, we can kind of say, no, we've been talking about this. I agree with you on that one, Shalinda. Hotep Pan Africa, good to hear from you. You said, I do not know what more we can do. Pressure on the administration will only go so far. It will not change the implications of the greater body of world politics vis-a-vis Russia. Yeah. Hey, like if this war was not happening, I think Brittney would have been home by now. If this war wasn't happening in the whole Pan-African, I think if this war, and you can agree with me or disagree with me on this, but if this war wasn't happening, she would have probably been home by now. Because of this war. Chris V, you said outside of the NBA and WNBA community, I don't see us hearing a lot about Brittney, unfortunately. Wow. Ooh. Wilbert Tucker, you said if you have the freedom to go overseas and make money, you have to go by the rules, and during that time, someone should have done better. Ooh. Ooh. Well, she knows she done wrong, Wilbert. I mean, she already admitted that. She admitted to making that mistake. She, and we talked about, she has access to some of the best lawyers in Russia. I mean, I don't know. I'm not gonna beat her over the head about it. She made a mistake. We all make mistakes, right? But making a mistake and feeling like you're being forgotten about are two different things. And I hope and pray that she can keep her spirit alive. Again, maybe there is a way, and I don't know if Sherelle Griner can tell us. Maybe they just need to tell us. The family can say, all right, look, write letters of support, write letters of encouragement, send them to we'll get them to Brittney. I don't know. I haven't heard of any organization or agency that is open to kind of being a conduit between us and her. So maybe that's the next step for us. I mean, to at least she can rely on the fact that she's getting good vibes sent her way from us. So maybe that's the next step. Sean, thank you so much. You said it would take an international movement like Free Mandela to help Brittney with Russia. It might have to. It may have to. Again, I mean, we bring her up into these conversations. Black leadership is bringing her up into these conversations. If anyone that has gone to the CBC, the convention, did they speak about it? I didn't read anything about that at the CBC. So, you know what I mean? Like maybe the CBC can kind of be a go-to. But Sean, I appreciate you. Janae, you said, and not add salt to the injury, we have our own rotting in jail here who ain't getting half the attention Brittney is getting for less offenses or wrong crime. Ooh. But, Janae, I get it. Like, I feel you on that. But that's Russia. I mean, American jails and Russian jails, you know what I mean? They're not getting the attention, but the treatment is probably a little bit better. Maybe. I've never been in jail in Russia and all that stuff, so I don't know, but she's a big deal in Russia still. But I definitely understand what you're saying. David McNulty, you said it's actually amazing the amount of intelligent people who think it's okay to travel internationally with dope. Nobody's saying that, David. Nobody's saying that. Nobody's saying that was the best move for her to make. Again, she already admitted to her mistake. So I don't think we need to kind of beat this dead horse like she's less intelligent, she shouldn't have done it. She already said she shouldn't have done it. Now it's just about, okay, we know what she did. She admitted to it. We got to move forward. Now, how do we make sure that our sister don't get into the state of where she feels like no one cares, no one's trying, that she falls in like a state of depression? And how do we make sure that the Griner family feels supported? I mean, I'm sure they do, because a lot of people have been talking about it. It's just that our culture, our news cycle is not always at the top of mind for us to talk about Brittney Griner, right? Because it's beyond us. It's like the only thing we could do, I feel like, outside of sending her some love through some cards and some other, correspondence, the only thing we could do is got to wait for what the Biden administration going to do. If the Biden administration is able to get a win before the midterm elections, black folks will probably, they'll vote for him again. Well, we will have to see. It really is also waiting on Russia. And the harder we come down on Russia, the harder, y'all hear me say this, the harder we come down on Russia, the harder it will get for us to bring her home. So we got to wait on Russia, and that's the hard pill right there. Taylor, you say her name lest we forget. We will never forget Brittney Griner and the struggle that she's experiencing right now. We will never forget her. Never. She made a mistake. It's a lesson that we can all learn from, whether you're an athlete or not. It's a lesson for WNBA members and NBA members. We will never forget Brittney Griner. It was just the wrong mistake at the wrong time. That's the thing. Cecilia Miller, thank you for checking in, Taylor. As always. Cecilia, you said this is a sensitive issue and we have to handle like eggs. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think Brittney know the roles back there and she should have left it alone. I get it. Cecilia, thank you. Will NC 100, why can't President Zelensky request her release? Because Putin hates Zelensky. He can't. Zelensky is trying to he's trying to advocate for the war to stop for his own people. Zelensky has been advocating for America to help Ukraine to stop the war against his own people. And he can say he's standing in solidarity, but his word has no weight to Putin. Now, maybe we can push it to the international community, the UN, right? Have a conversation with that. But America is busy on justifying its efforts within this war and its role in this war. That's what America is focused on. It might be a humanitarian effort. But again, I don't know. Like the way Putin is moving right now, the man is talking about nuclears. He's not even thinking about any prisoner. He's not even thinking about his own prisoner. The man is talking about nuclear. He's sending out nuclear threats. He's on a whole different page. So Zelensky's word won't matter. I don't think will matter. Sophia, you checked in and said after OPEC just made a power move with include Russia, we need a class in overseas diplomacy. Oh, come on, man. That's why we got college. Sophia. That's why we need Black folks in international diplomacy. That's, HBCUs are opening their doors and having these courses about this, foreign affairs. You got to have that. And I appreciate you, Sophia, as always. New Flower checking in. Good to hear from you, New Flower. Sound like you're a new watcher as well. You said she should have gotten time served when she went to court. Right. But the problem is, New Flower, shoulda, coulda, woulda. That's Monday morning quarterback. At this point, it is what it is. Now we got to deal with the current moment we're in. The current moment is she's still sitting in jail. We're still waiting to hear back from Russia about this proposal to do this prisoner swap. Her family is still trying to advocate to make sure that we don't forget her. Guess what? The news cycle goes and it continues. So you got all of these dynamics at play right now. I really don't know. New Flower, I appreciate you. Pauline, you checked in. Pauline Hurt, you said, you mean to tell me no one in Russia smoke weed? Damn, I'm sure they do. But they ain't trying to go to prison for it. Before we had a conversation about legalizing weed, did you see anybody? Hell, we got some states that are talking about legalizing weed, and we still don't want to be caught with smoking here in the United States. Nah, 9.5 years for a little CBD oil that you use, that you distribute. Please, it's not even enough for me to use. Wilbur Tucker, you said don't matter who's in office, Russia's not working with the USA. Yeah. Wilbur, I'm not right now. Not right now. They know they got a bargaining chip. They know the ball is in their court. They're gonna play the game the way they want to play the game, and that's the unfortunate part. And they know that if the United States continue to piss them off, Guess who's going to sit in jail? Brittney Griner. This is why, and here's the other part about this very quickly, folks, as we wrap up this part of the discussion. This is why I think Paul Whelan has been in jail for so long, because nobody, like, what can you do? I think he was in jail, if I'm not mistaken, for like 16 years. And I hope that she, you know, is not going to just languish there for, yeah. He received a prison sentence of 16 years. This is for Paul Whelan on June 15, 2020. So that man don't even, he might not come home till about 2036. He just received his prison sentence a couple of years ago. So by 2036, he may come home unless they get this prisoner swap done. Can y'all imagine that? When he was in prison, he got in prison. He was 50 years. He was born in 1970. So he's 50 years old. So he's not looking to come home. At the time that they sentenced him, he was 50 years old. So he's not looking to come home until he's like 66. If the prison swap don't do it, it doesn't work. Imagine his family, because he's been sitting. We talking about a couple of months. That man been sitting for years. Wanda Will, I hope I'm saying that correctly. You said people Russia make you confess in order to broker a deal. We don't know for sure she even had a dope or committed a crime, but USA can't make Russia do anything. She confessed to it. She already admitted to it. She said she did what she was wrong. She already admitted to it. I don't know. Y'all, I don't know. You know, I certainly would love to speak to Sherelle, get her on the show, see what she can do, ask her what would the family like for us to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got hip hop artists, you got all types of voices that's been advocating for Brittney to come home. I don't know. But we will see. I gotta, certainly keep you posted on this, but I just at least wanted to share with you what Brittney's wife has been saying about Brittney's state of mind. But I think the least that we can do is figure out how we can get some good love, some good vibes to Brittney. Maybe a card, something to see. Let's see if we can work something out. Let's all put our heads together and see if we can come up with a way. If anybody got, and I'm saying this because we're a community here. So if anybody got, can talk to the folks at CBC, or what can be done. And if you know somebody in those high-ranking positions, whether it's somebody in the CBC or in any other government space, and you say, Farajii, talk to this person, let's have this person on, and let's get some instructions. By all means, I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to have that person on, talk to us, and share with us what's the next course of action that we need to do to support our sister Brittney. I don't want her to fall into a place where she feels like she's forgotten. That's important. And when you're in that type of situation, you need to keep your spirits up. The last thing you need is to start to forget you think that the world forgotten you, that you this big superstar, and then people moved on after the news cycle was ended with your name. No. So we got to figure it out. Let's put our heads together, folks. All right, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, Trends, Posts, and Doing the Most. Stay with us. It's The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
There's an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol. We've seen
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
When we invest in ourselves, we're investing in what's next for all of us. Growing, creating, making moves that move us all forward. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
All right, folks, for today's final segment, Trends, Posts, and Doing the Most, we wanted to bring you up to date with something that I saw trending. I knew what's going to happen, folks. That Oscar slap, I mean, it put a little damper on Will Smith's reputation, but guess what? Didn't stop the Will Smith train from running, folks. Will Smith is going to be in a new movie that's presented by Apple TV called Emancipation. Check out the trailer.
I heard it myself. Slaves are free. Zazu. Lincoln. We must get to Lincoln's army. 5 days. Through this swamp.
There are many ways to die in a swamp.
There are many ways to die here.
I will not be afraid. What can a mere man do to me?
Follow the sound of Lincoln's cannons.
My family is with me forever. I will look in triumph at my enemies.
Wow. That's the new Will Smith film, Emancipation, following the story of a character named Peter, an enslaved man who escapes a Louisiana plantation and makes his way north. Now, according to Apple, folks, the film was inspired by the 1863 photo of Whipped Peter. You might remember one of these images. This is the image of the black man whose back was to the camera. He was actually in real life. The brother was taking his clothes off, and he was sitting in a position where you saw the whelps on his back. Y'all seen this photo, and Keen, if we can pop that up if you find that very quickly. But this image is one of the most known images of the transatlantic slave trade. It's known as the scourged back. And it shows Peter's bare back mutilated from whippings by his enslavers, and it proved to be instrumental in shifting the public sentiment in opposition to slavery. Now, this film, as you saw, is directed by Antoine Fuqua, who's been doing films a lot. He did Training Day and many other great films written by William College. The film had its first public screening in Washington on Saturday night during the CBC Foundation's 51st Annual Legislative Conference. So that was happened. The event was followed by a question and answer session featuring none other than Antoine Fuqua and Will Smith at the CBC, who had remained largely out of the public eye since the Oscars. So this film is moving forward. This is what Will Smith tweeted in the release of the trailer. Check this out. He put it out there that he wanted to show the appreciation that Apple has to the commitment of this film. He said, blood, sweat, and tears. Literally. Shout out to Apple who doubled and tripled down on their commitment to deliver this epic story to the world. Now, this film was scheduled to be released next year in 2023, but because Apple wanted this film to be considered, get this, folks, he wanted this film to be considered for Oscar for award season this year. They're going to release it in December. Now, you remember, Will Smith is banned from the Academy Awards for 10 years as a result of the Oscar slap, and he's also resigned from it. So even if he gets an award, he can't accept it. But Apple said, we can accept the accommodation, the nomination, though. So they are hoping that this film is going to bring it. The other part about it is that Will Smith said early in his career that he was not interested in doing any slave films or films that made Black people look like we were disparaging. So what you might see in the trailer may not just be your traditional quote unquote slave film. There is Will said that this film is actually a love story between Peter and his family. So we shall see on December the 2nd. It's going to be opening in theaters and then streaming on Apple TV Plus December the 9th. So we will see. I will be interested in hearing what how this film plays out. Man, oh man. All right, folks. Well, that's all that we got for Trends, Posts, and Doing the Most, and that's all we got for today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Big shout out to my guy, Hassan Giordano, for checking in and always politicking with him. So we appreciate that. Big shout out to you, my online culture crew. Thank you for being a part of the conversation as always. And if you're a brand new watcher, thank you. Welcome to the show. We hope that you tune back in tomorrow and Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday to hear what we got to say and have these conversations. But thank you. Also, big shout out to Mr. Carlos Williams from DBC to talk about rebranding your life and yourself. Folks, also, we're going to continue to look into options to see what can be done for our sister Brittney Griner. We got to figure it out. What can be done, at least to show her that she's not forgotten, that we have her in our hearts, and that we want to show her family that, look, we want to do all that we can. Just let us know what we need to do. So we'll continue to work on that. But thank you so much for tuning in. Stay tuned at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. RMU, Roland Martin Unfiltered. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll talk tomorrow. Big shout out to my team, Joel, King Keenan, Ariel. Thank you. In my control room, thank you so much for making the podcast a success. And God willing, we'll talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Follow me on all social media at The Real Farajii. Follow me on Twitter at Farajii. Y'all check out the Twitter conversation. I would love to get your input on what we've been talking about and so much more. And we'll see each other tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture on the Black Star Network. Peace.